Bye weeks are here, injuries keep happening, trades might be in the works for NFL teams. Chaos as always. What do you need to do for fantasy? You need to get ahead of the game. Don't just react. Let's be proactive. Let's beat the breakout on some players that could have value. And in fact, some of them already have. You just might not know it. You also want to be proactive. Do your research and look ahead when it's time to make those NFL pick'ems on Underdog. And for some reason you haven't tried Underdog yet, this is a good time because you get a new customer free pick of Dak Prescott just getting 1 yard. That's right, in week 5, Dak Prescott go higher than 0.5 total yards, you get that pick absolutely free. And you also still get a deposit match up to $1,000 of bonus cash just for trying Underdog. Make sure you use code ENDGAME when you sign up. Now this weekend, I'm actually here in Vegas, and Vegas has been a little hotbed of rumors for the NFL world because, you know, Davante Adams is asking out. He hasn't come out and officially said that, but it's pretty obvious he wants out. And in the meanwhile, he's not playing because, his hamstring, it just can't give it a go. It just can't do it. You know, it's too much pain. That injury just suddenly cropped up last week. So with Davante Adams out, obviously that leaves a lot of targets open in Vegas, and you might have seen really Jacoby Myers standing up. I mean, sure, he's the #1 receiver there now, but we also need somebody else, and it's been Trey Tucker. And so Trey Tucker is, I guess, the #2 receiver for the Raiders, and who knows, maybe the rest of the season that's going to last if something goes down with Adams. Even if Adams doesn't get traded, well, he is injured right now, or at least he's not playing. How long is that going to last? We don't know. Maybe at least until the trade deadline. And then if Adams does get moved to the Jets or wherever he wants to go, then yeah, Trey Tucker's going to be valuable the rest of the season. Not that this is the best passing offense or anything, but still the #2 target in an NFL offense has value in fantasy. And I'll tell you what, Trey Tucker has actually looked good the last couple weeks, and one of those games was actually with Adams on the field still. Last 2 games, 15 targets he's drawn, and again, only 1 without Adams. He's got 12 catches, 137 yards those 2 games. And during that time, averaging a pretty healthy 8.6 yards per target here. And in just those last 2 games, because let's face it, the first 2 weeks didn't really do much of anything, but weeks 3 and 4, a 23% target share and a 32% yardage share. And you know that target share is going to continue to go up if Adams is just completely gone. Now, of course, we expect Brock Bowers to really be technically the #2 receiver there behind Myers, maybe the #1. It's still going to take a little bit of time, right? Bowers, we got to back off just a little bit here. But Trey Tucker has shown some things already, and this guy's not just a vertical threat, though he can get vertical and make some big plays down the field. That's kind of all he did last year on occasion, but Tucker has definitely improved here year 2, so it's a guy to grab right now if he hasn't. A lot of people just saw week 3 as a fluke. A lot of people don't realize that he's even there outside of Raiders fans, so Trey Tucker, a name to grab. He's widely available across fantasy leagues still. All right, now here's a name you know. It's Antonio Gibson of the Patriots. And sure, this is not a young player. This is not somebody who's coming out of nowhere. But I kind of feel like beat the breakout is appropriate for him because let's face it, has he ever really done what was expected or hoped from him? I mean, so much hype, so much, expectation was put on him. Probably a little too much unfairly when he was with Washington. Of course, we keep hearing about this hybrid receiver turned running back and what he can do. It really hasn't happened for him. And there's a reason why he's not in Washington anymore. And, he's in New England this year. So a lot of people has just conveniently forgotten him because let's face it, it's not a dynamic offense. He hasn't done much the last couple of seasons. Some people have just flat out given up on Antonio Gibson, but not the Patriots. And I'll tell you what, he's shown some bursts. He's got a couple of long runs already this season. But of course, you probably know the news here, besides all the Adams, smoking rumors. Ramondre Stevenson might be benched. Now, this doesn't mean that he's completely out of the picture and doesn't mean it's long term. It doesn't even mean that he's not going to play in week 5. He'll play. But at some point, Jared Mayo's just got to say enough is enough. He probably got a call from Bill Belichick over the weekend saying, hey, dude, this guy will not stop fumbling. You've got to set an example here. I don't think that it's a coincidence. This is the Patriots coach. Like, Ramondre has fumbled in every game so far, 4 straight games. Yeah, you probably should send a message, do something, whatever it takes. And that message might involve Antonio Gibson being the RB1, at least for this week. But it's not just that. Like I said, Gibson's actually done pretty well for himself so far this year in this very run-heavy Patriots offense, because the Patriots really have no means of passing the ball right now. Patriots, one of the few teams that actually have more rush attempts than pass attempts on the season. I doubt that changes anytime soon. And Gibson is at the very least in the mix here. It's maybe going to be 50-50 going forward unless Ramondre really reasserts himself. But at the very least in the short term, Gibson is somebody who's interesting. There are bye weeks. There are injuries. You probably need help at running back in some way, shape, or form. And Antonio Gibson is just the most obvious. Look, he's actually averaging 5.3 yards per attempt so far this season. Most of that on the strength of that long run, but he can still do that. This is still a guy who has speed and, of course, a good receiver out of the backfield. And that might be where he gives his most value to you when he gets more run or the start over Ramondre, however long that lasts. And if you're just looking for upside at running back, looking for somebody to stash, somebody who could help you a little bit more down the road, let's circle back and go to Trey Benson, a guy who a lot of people have just dropped and, I'm not going to bother with, because let's face it, James Conner has been really good this year and he hasn't gotten hurt yet. But we can't just conveniently forget the fact that James Conner has never, and I mean never, in his career, played a full season in the NFL. He's always missed at least a game, if not multiple games. We know he's had a lot of different issues, and Conner, look, is a warrior. He always comes back strong. But even just the last couple of seasons in Arizona, only played 13 games. That means that's 8 games missed over 2 seasons. I mean, he is not getting younger. He still looks great, but just have to accept the fact he could miss games, and when he does, Trey Benson will be the guy. Trey Benson has not really been the guy because they're still kind of giving that backup job to Mario Demercado for now, but they didn't draft Trey Benson just to sit him on the bench. It's not like he's been horrible. He's just a rookie running back, and rookie running backs are slow played into the league these days. That's just how it is. It's also easy to forget Trey Benson, although he was a 3rd round pick, and sure, that doesn't get you too excited, but remember, these days, that's actually pretty good draft capital for a running back. He was the 2nd RB taken off the board after Jonathan Brooks. He was picked 3.2. And the Cardinals, given the fact they had James Conner already, you wouldn't think that that wasn't their highest area of need, and it wasn't. But you got to figure they drafted Benson for a reason, to become the heir apparent after this season, and they're not going to just wait till next season to start putting Benson in the mix. It's going to start to happen eventually, more and more. He'll see more touches, slowly but surely. And then, again, when Conner misses time, look, it could happen to any running back, not just James Conner. But do you really want to be fighting and throwing, fistfuls of fab just to try to get him? Or would you rather just stash him now? That's what I thought. All right, now I know I've talked about Jalen Tolbert in the past. In fact, even on the waiver wire after a very impressive second week, he's looked pretty good. The 3rd-year breakout might be coming. But then it seems like he, and of course this whole Cowboys offense, is taking some steps back lately. But there are some encouraging signs. Now, of course, I will say right now, right here, I'm talking about Jalen Tolbert because you may know Brandon Cooks is out definitely for week 5, and who knows how long he's going to be out with this knee infection. It's something that they're going to have to take a look at. At the very least, we're probably looking a couple of weeks, who knows. But I will say Jalen Tolbert is going to have to assume a bigger role, because really after him, what do they have? A lot of ifs and maybes and not sure. Cavante Turpin and Jalen Brooks and I don't know, Ryan Flournoy. I think that's getting too deep. I mean, at some point, maybe one of those guys steps up. But let's just go to Tolbert, because really he's just still out there in a lot of waiver wires because he hasn't done much recently. I mean, the Cowboys offense has struggled, the Cowboys defense has struggled, but this is still a pretty good offense. They can score points. And what I like is the fact that this is an offense that, as of right now, has the 2nd most pass attempts in the NFL. They are definitely airing it out, partly out of need because they've given up points, but they're just going to do that also because, let's face it, they don't have much of a running game. CeeDee Lamb, of course, Jake Ferguson, pretty much becoming a set and forget tight end, and then what? Jalen Tolbert. I mean, this is the guy to look to. If he's out there, I think this is the time to go and get him because he could be a surprising source of fantasy points going forward. As it stands right now, an 11.8% target share and a 20% air yard share. I mean, those numbers are definitely going to rise and might rise by a good amount. You know, Dak Prescott said good things about Tolbert in the preseason. He's looked pretty good, and in fact, he has been pretty good. He's just not getting the targets he really deserves, to be honest. When you talk about things like separation score, which is known as kind of the trendy new stat this year, one that is definitely valid. Well, there's average separation score, which is obviously something you want to look at, but Jacob Gibbs, very trustworthy source, he's somebody who analyzes the data and talking about receivers who get multiple steps of separation, meaning they're getting wide open basically. And when you look at this list, Jalen Tolbert's top 5 among all wide receivers. He really should be getting more targets, and this is very encouraging. So with all that said, the volume could be there. You know, he's been effective when given the chance. I think Jalen Tolbert's one of these high upside wide receivers I'm going to take a chance on. All right, now while separation scores and everything, it is something that's going to make us look real hard at Luke McCaffrey. And that's the only thing right now, to be honest, because he's really not even getting involved. Only 7 targets in the first 4 games. But he's right up there, again, top 10 among all wide receivers, not just talking rookies here, in terms of separation score. So why aren't they throwing in the ball? We're seeing guys like Olamide Zaccheaus and Noah Brown and all these cast-offs from other teams now getting involved in the offense. Zach Ertz, of course, the tight ends. I think it'll come from McCaffrey. And let's face it, this is a rookie. He's still going to acclimate to the pro game. Getting separation has not been an issue, so that's good. But, of course, he's going to have to really nail down the playbook, make sure he gets the trust of his quarterback. And again, this just takes a little bit of time, but if he's doing his job the right way, eventually it will come. And they want him to be a part of this team. He's going to occupy a very important role as the primary slot guy in this offense. And let's face it, Washington's offense is a lot farther along than we imagined it would be at this point in the season. So we have no questions at this point about Jaden Daniels. Well, I don't think there's really too much left for McCaffrey to prove. He just needs to really become a part of the playbook, and maybe that's more on the OC, Cliff Kingsbury, than anything. But I think it'll happen. So let's trust the process here. Again, McCaffrey, not going to put up numbers in the very near future, but we're trying to stash and get ahead of the game. I think McCaffrey at some point will pay off. All right, and I'm just going to admit this is a complete flyer here. A lot of risk taking on a quarterback who isn't a starter, and especially one in an offense that isn't that great, and especially one in an offense that might be losing its top receiver. So I'm going to talk about Aiden O'Connell, and yeah, partly because of the whole thing that's happening here. I get it. There's a lot of risk, but let's remember that Gardner Minshew wasn't even sure to be the starter last week. Aiden O'Connell came in a little bit of garbage time the week before. Didn't look too bad. Aiden O'Connell was a starter last year. At some point, if things go south for the Raiders, I mean, like more south, and Devontae Adams is gone, at what point do they say, why are we starting Gardner Minshew? Like, what is he doing? Just getting us by if we're headed towards the draft pick anyways? Why not see what they have with Aiden O'Connell and then really decide, do we need to draft a quarterback next year, or are we good with O'Connell for at least the short term and then see what else we can do? So I will say this, Aiden O'Connell does have a strong arm. He did have some moments last season. He really wasn't that bad. A 62.5 completion percentage, 13 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I mean, he legitimately had a claim to potentially start for the Raiders, but they went with Minshew, the veteran, I guess the guy who they felt gave him a better chance to win. They really wanted to establish their identity running the ball, but none of that has happened. They are not really a good rushing team. They're not really a good enough defense that they can just get by with minimal passing. And again, at some point when things go to the point where they don't think they're going to be in it this year, why not give O'Connell a chance? So obviously not going to have a lot of value in a single quarterback league for fantasy, but you're in a dynasty league, you can stash him. You're in a super flex 2 QB league, you might like him better than some of the other options out there. So just keep an eye on this whole situation in Vegas and see what happens. Aiden O'Connell might be one of the first backup quarterbacks to become a starter from this point going forward. And you want to keep an eye out for all the fantasy advice we have for you to help you win in week 5. It's in this week's playlist. You can catch right there.